Lakota Shaman dreamed of his perfect woman. She had the power to unite two nations. The morning light moved slowly across the wide plains, touching the grass with a soft golden glow. The land felt endless, stretching far beyond the horizon, where sky and earth seemed to meet in quiet understanding. A Lakota shaman walked alone along a narrow path that curved beside a small stream. His steps were slow but steady, guided by years of experience and deep connection to the land. He listened to the sound of the wind brushing through the grass, the distant cry of birds, and the gentle flow of water. To him, every sound carried meaning. People in his community respected him greatly. They came to him for guidance when life felt uncertain. Some asked about dreams, others about illness, and many about the balance between tradition and change. He never claimed to know everything, yet his calm presence made others feel safe. He believed that wisdom came not from speaking loudly but from listening carefully. For many years he had lived with a dream that returned again and again. It was always the same in feeling, though sometimes the details shifted slightly. In the dream, he stood on open ground between two groups of people who faced each other with tension in their eyes. The air felt heavy, filled with unspoken fear. Between them stood a woman he had never seen in real life. She was calm, strong without appearing forceful. She did not raise her voice, yet everyone listened when she spoke. The dream never revealed her full story, only the sense that she carried the power to bring peace where conflict existed. At first, he dismissed the dream as imagination. Dreams came and went, and not all of them carried meaning. But as years passed and the dream returned again and again, he began to believe it was more than a simple vision. Elders told him that some dreams unfolded slowly, like seeds planted deep in the earth that waited for the right season to grow. Life on the plains was changing. Trade routes expanded, bringing new goods and new challenges. Some nearby communities were friendly, while others viewed each other with suspicion. Small disagreements sometimes grew into larger arguments, fueled by misunderstandings rather than true anger. The shaman noticed how quickly fear could spread when people felt uncertain about the future. He often sat beside the council fire in the evenings, listening to younger warriors speak about protecting their traditions. They worried that outside influence would weaken their identity. Older members of the tribe reminded them that strength came from wisdom as well as courage. The shaman watched these conversations carefully, understanding that both sides held pieces of truth. One afternoon, he joined a group preparing for a seasonal gathering. Families worked together setting up shelters and preparing food. Children ran through the grass, laughing freely, unaware of the worries carried by the adults. The shaman smiled softly as he watched them. He believed that peace was not only about avoiding conflict, but about protecting moments like these. That night, the dream returned with greater clarity than before. He stood in a circle of firelight. The mysterious woman faced him directly for the first time. Her eyes reflected determination and compassion. She did not speak, yet he felt a strong message. Unity required patience. When he woke, he felt both hopeful and restless. The following days felt heavier. Travelers arrived with news from distant areas. Some spoke of trade disputes, others of cultural misunderstandings that caused tension between groups. Rumors spread quickly, and not all of them were true. The shaman noticed how easily fear shaped the stories people told. He spent long hours walking alone, thinking deeply. The wind felt stronger that week, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. He believed that nature often mirrored human emotions. Change was coming, whether people welcomed it or not. During one council meeting, leaders discussed the possibility of meeting with neighboring communities to ease tensions. Some supported the idea, believing cooperation would bring stability. Others argued that meeting outsiders could create more problems. The discussion grew heated, voices rising until the shaman quietly raised his hand. When he spoke, he used few words, reminding everyone that listening was the first step toward understanding. His calm voice slowed the room, allowing people to breathe again. Later that evening, an elder approached him privately. The elder had watched him closely for many years and sensed that something weighed on his mind. The shaman spoke about the recurring dream and the woman who appeared in it. The elder listened carefully, nodding slowly. Sometimes, the elder said, dreams show us not what will happen but what is possible. You may meet this person, or you may become the bridge yourself. The words stayed with him long after the conversation ended. Days passed and preparations continued for a gathering planned near the river. Representatives from nearby communities would attend, hoping to find solutions to growing tensions. The shaman felt a quiet anticipation he could not fully explain. One afternoon, a group of travelers arrived unexpectedly. They carried news of a woman known for moving between cultures with unusual ease. She spoke multiple languages and helped settle disagreements through careful conversation. Some praised her as a peacemaker. Others viewed her with suspicion because she belonged fully to neither side. When the shaman heard her description, he felt a sudden stillness inside him. The way the travelers described her calm presence, her ability to stand between opposing groups, sounded familiar. He remembered the dream with new intensity. He did not immediately tell others about his thoughts. Instead, he observed quietly, gathering more information. He learned that she had faced many challenges growing up, learning to survive by understanding different perspectives. Rather than choosing one side over another, she built bridges wherever she went. That evening, he walked alone to the edge of the camp. The sky turned shades of orange and purple as the sun disappeared behind distant hills. He closed his eyes, feeling the cool air on his face. He wondered whether the dream had been preparing him for this moment. Despite his calm nature, he felt uncertainty. What if he misunderstood the dream? What if meeting her changed nothing? He reminded himself that expectations could become obstacles if held too tightly. Meanwhile, tension continued to grow among younger warriors who feared losing control of their future. Some spoke openly about defending their land if negotiations failed. The shaman listened carefully, understanding their fears without encouraging conflict. He believed that fear often came from feeling unheard. As the days moved closer to the gathering, people from different communities began arriving near the river. The camp grew larger, filled with new voices and unfamiliar faces. Some greeted each other warmly, while others watched from a distance, unsure of what to expect. The shaman helped prepare ceremonial spaces meant to encourage respectful dialogue. He believed that the environment influenced how people behaved. When people felt respected, they were more likely to listen. On the night before the meeting, he sat by the fire, watching sparks rise into the dark sky. He thought about the dream again, remembering how the woman stood calmly between opposing groups. For the first time, he wondered if the dream had not only shown her but also shown him his role, to recognize unity when it appeared and help others see it too. As he prepared to rest, he felt a quiet certainty growing inside him. The journey ahead would not be easy. Peace rarely came quickly, and trust took time to build. Yet he sensed that something important was beginning. The part ends with him standing at the edge of the river at dawn, watching the first arrivals of the gathering approach from the distance. Among them, somewhere, was the woman from his dreams. He did not know what would happen when they met, but he felt ready to face whatever came, guided by patience, respect, and hope for unity. The morning of the gathering arrived quietly, wrapped in a cool mist rising from the river. The camp had grown larger overnight, filled with people from different backgrounds, each carrying their own hopes and worries. Fires burned slowly as families prepared food and elders greeted visitors with cautious respect. The Lakota Shaman moved through the camp calmly, offering small nods and gentle smiles, sensing the tension hidden beneath polite greetings. He felt a strange mix of peace and anticipation. Somewhere among the arriving groups was the woman he had heard about, the one who moved easily between cultures, the one who helped people listen to each other. He tried not to assume too much. Dreams were guides, not commands. Still, something inside him told him that this meeting would matter. As the sun climbed higher, leaders gathered near the riverbank where a circle had been prepared for discussions. Mats were laid carefully on the ground, and a fire burned at the center as a symbol of shared purpose. People sat in groups according to their traditions, some close to allies, others slightly apart from those they did not fully trust. Then she arrived. She walked without rushing, accompanied by a small group of travelers. Her clothing showed influences from different cultures, simple yet practical. She carried herself with quiet confidence, not trying to draw attention, but naturally becoming the focus of many eyes. Some greeted her warmly, while others observed silently, unsure of who she truly represented. The shaman watched from a short distance. The moment he saw her, something inside him grew still. The feeling was not dramatic or overwhelming, but calm and familiar, like recognizing a place he had visited long ago. Her expression held both strength and kindness, and she moved carefully, acknowledging people from both sides equally. When their eyes met briefly across the circle, he felt the echo of his dream, not as a prediction fulfilled, but as a recognition of shared purpose. He did not approach her immediately. Instead, he waited, allowing the gathering to begin naturally. The early conversations were cautious. Leaders spoke about trade routes, hunting grounds, and misunderstandings that had caused recent tension. Translators worked hard to ensure everyone understood each other clearly. Even so, small misunderstandings slipped into the discussion, creating moments of silence or discomfort. The woman listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, her words were simple and thoughtful. She asked questions instead of making demands, encouraging others to explain their perspectives fully. Slowly, the atmosphere shifted from confrontation toward curiosity. The shaman noticed how people leaned forward slightly when she spoke, as if drawn by her calm presence. She did not claim authority, yet others respected her naturally. It reminded him of the dream again, the quiet strength that brought people together without force. During a break in the discussions, she walked toward the river alone, perhaps seeking a moment of peace away from the crowd. The shaman decided that this was the right time to approach her. He walked slowly, making sure not to startle her. She turned before he spoke, as if she had sensed his presence. They greeted each other respectfully. Up close, he saw signs of a life filled with travel and challenge, a confidence shaped by experience rather than comfort. She introduced herself simply, without titles. He did the same. Their conversation began carefully, each learning about the other's role in the gathering. She explained that she had grown up between different communities, learning to understand both sides of many conflicts. Because she belonged fully to neither group, she often became a bridge between them. The shaman listened deeply, recognizing the wisdom in her approach. He shared his belief that unity began with listening, not speaking. They quickly discovered shared values: patience, respect for tradition, and the importance of seeing humanity in everyone. He did not tell her about the dream immediately. Instead, he allowed the connection to grow naturally through honest conversation. She spoke about the challenges she faced, including mistrust from people who believed she could not be loyal if she moved between cultures. He understood that burden well. Being a spiritual guide also meant balancing many expectations. As they spoke, the noise of the camp faded into the background. Time seemed slower, as if the moment itself held importance beyond ordinary conversation. Draven Gulain described her idea for the gathering: not to solve everything at once, but to create small agreements that could grow into lasting trust. People trust actions more than words, she said quietly. If we begin with small steps, they will see that cooperation works. The shaman agreed. He believed that meaningful change often began with simple gestures. They discussed practical ideas, shared trade rules, joint celebrations, and ways to prevent misunderstandings from spreading. When they returned to the circle, the discussion had become tense again. Two leaders argued about territory boundaries, their voices rising slightly. Others watched nervously, unsure how to respond. The woman waited until there was a pause before speaking calmly. She suggested that each side describe not only what they wanted, but why it mattered to them emotionally. Her approach changed the tone of the conversation. Instead of arguing over outcomes, people began explaining their fears and hopes. The shaman supported her by encouraging respectful listening, reminding everyone that understanding came before agreement. Throughout the day, progress came slowly. Some participants remained skeptical, questioning whether true cooperation was possible. Others worried that compromise meant weakness. The woman and the shaman worked together naturally, reinforcing each other's messages without competing for attention. As evening approached, a small breakthrough occurred. Two groups agreed to share a trade route temporarily as a test of cooperation. It was not a complete solution, but it represented a shift toward trust. People began to relax slightly, sensing that progress was possible. Later that night, the camp felt different. Conversations around fires included laughter mixed with serious discussion. Children from different communities played together near the river, watched carefully by adults who seemed cautiously hopeful. The shaman and the woman walked together along the water's edge, reflecting on the day. He finally shared his recurring dream, explaining how he had seen someone standing between opposing groups long before meeting her. He listened quietly, not dismissing the idea, but also not assuming it meant destiny. Instead, she smiled gently. "Maybe the dream was not about me alone," she said. "Maybe it was about people choosing to stand together." Her response impressed him. She did not seek to become a symbol or a legend. She saw herself simply as someone willing to do the work required for peace. Despite the positive moments, challenges remained. Some individuals whispered doubts about her intentions, questioning whether someone connected to multiple cultures could truly represent anyone fairly. The shaman knew that trust took time and could not be forced. As they returned to the camp, he felt both hopeful and aware of the difficulties ahead. The connection between them felt strong, built not on fate alone but on shared purpose. He realized that the dream had prepared him to recognize this partnership, one that combined spiritual guidance with practical wisdom. The night ended with a quiet sense of anticipation. Tomorrow's discussions would test whether the progress made could continue. For now, he watched the stars above the plains, feeling that something important had begun. Something fragile, yet powerful enough to change the future if nurtured carefully. The next morning began with a different feeling in the air. The camp was quieter than usual, not because people had lost interest, but because many were thinking deeply about the progress made the day before. Small agreements had created hope, but hope alone was not enough to remove years of doubt. The Lakota Shaman noticed that some people walked with lighter steps while others seemed more guarded, as if waiting for something to go wrong. The woman arrived early at the meeting circle, sitting beside the fire before others gathered. She watched the river flow slowly, her expression calm but thoughtful. The shaman joined her without speaking at first. They had learned quickly that silence between them felt comfortable, not empty. Both understood that real change required patience. When the leaders began to arrive, the discussions continued from where they had ended the previous day. At first, the conversations remained respectful. People spoke carefully, trying to build on the small progress they had achieved. Translators worked steadily, ensuring that meaning was clear and accurate. However, as the morning continued, tension slowly returned. A misunderstanding about trade goods created confusion. One group believed an agreement had already been made, while another insisted no final decision had been reached. Voices grew firmer, and frustration appeared on several faces. The shaman watched closely, recognizing how quickly a small disagreement could grow larger. The woman stepped forward gently, asking both sides to explain their understanding step by step. She did not accuse anyone of being wrong. Instead, she guided them through the details patiently. Slowly, it became clear that the misunderstanding came from different interpretations of the same conversation, rather than intentional deception. Even after clarification, the emotional weight remained. Some participants felt embarrassed or defensive. Others worried that such misunderstandings proved cooperation would always fail. The shaman spoke calmly, reminding everyone that learning to work together required time and practice. His words encouraged people to take a deep breath and continue. Despite these efforts, tension increased later in the day when news arrived from outside the camp. A messenger reported that a small conflict had occurred between traders near another settlement. The details were unclear, but rumors spread quickly, creating fear that violence might return. Some leaders immediately questioned whether continuing negotiations was safe. The atmosphere changed noticeably. People who had begun to trust each other now looked uncertain again. The woman sensed the shift and addressed the group with steady confidence. She suggested gathering accurate information before reacting to rumors. Acting on incomplete knowledge, she explained, could destroy progress that had taken days to build. The shaman supported her, encouraging everyone to remain grounded. He believed that fear often grew strongest when people imagined worst-case scenarios without understanding the truth. Together, they helped slow the rising anxiety as council was formed to investigate the situation calmly. Representatives from both sides volunteered to gather information together, demonstrating a small but meaningful step toward cooperation. Watching this, the shaman felt hope return. During the afternoon, smaller conversations took place around the camp. People who had avoided each other before began sharing stories about their lives, discovering unexpected similarities. A young trader spoke about his family's struggles during harsh winters, and someone from another group shared a nearly identical experience. These moments created quiet bridges between individuals, even when leaders continued debating larger issues. The woman moved between groups with gentle confidence, listening more than speaking. She encouraged people to share their fears openly instead of hiding them behind anger. Some conversations became emotional, revealing how deeply past conflicts had shaped people's views. Rather than rushing to solutions, she allowed space for understanding to grow. The shaman observed her carefully. He admired how she balanced strength with humility. She did not try to control the situation, yet her presence guided others naturally toward cooperation. He remembered the dream again, realizing that its meaning went beyond a single moment. The dream had prepared him to recognize the value of partnership. Later in the day, a serious challenge arose. A small group within the gathering openly expressed doubt about the entire process. They argued that working together with outsiders threatened their traditions. Their concerns were not expressed with anger, but with deep worry. They feared losing identity and independence. Instead of dismissing their concerns, the woman invited them to speak fully. She listened carefully, asking questions that showed respect rather than judgment. The shaman added his voice, explaining that unity did not require abandoning tradition. True strength, he said, came from understanding one's roots while remaining open to growth. The conversation lasted a long time. Some participants remained unconvinced, but others began to see that cooperation could exist without losing cultural identity. By allowing disagreement without hostility, the gathering avoided becoming divided. As evening approached, news returned from the council investigating the outside conflict. They confirmed that the situation had been exaggerated by rumors. The disagreement between traders had been resolved peacefully before becoming serious. Relief spread through the camp, reminding everyone how quickly fear could distort reality. The woman used this moment to emphasize the importance of communication. She suggested creating shared channels for exchanging information quickly, preventing future misunderstandings. Many agreed that better communication could prevent unnecessary conflict. The shaman noticed how people began to view her differently. At first, some had questioned her role. Now many respected her ability to remain calm under pressure. He felt grateful for her presence, recognizing how her practical skills complemented his spiritual guidance. As night fell, fires lit the camp again. Music and storytelling began slowly, creating a warmer atmosphere. Children gathered around elders, listening to stories that taught lessons about patience and resilience. The shaman joined a circle where people from different backgrounds shared songs. The sound of voices blending together felt symbolic of the unity they were trying to achieve. Later, he and the woman walked along the river once more. They reflected on the day's challenges and progress. She admitted that moments of doubt still came to her, especially when people questioned her intentions. He reassured her that trust grew slowly and that perseverance was part of leadership. Their connection deepened through honest conversation. It was not dramatic or sudden, but steady and grounded. They respected each other's strengths and recognized how their partnership created balance. Before returning to the camp, they stood quietly watching the stars. The shaman felt that the journey ahead remained uncertain, yet he no longer felt alone in carrying the responsibility. Together they had guided the gathering through one of its most difficult days, without allowing conflict to take control. As the night ended, he realized that unity was not achieved through one great moment, but through many small choices made each day. The fragile agreement forming between communities needed constant care, Yet for the first time, he believed that lasting peace might truly be possible if people continued choosing understanding over fear. The following days brought colder winds as winter slowly settled over the plains. Frost covered the grass each morning, turning the land silver under the rising sun. The gathering near the river had ended, but its influence continued to shape the lives of everyone involved. Agreements made during those meetings were now being tested by real life, where trust had to grow through action, rather than words alone. The Lakota Shaman returned to his community with a thoughtful calmness. People gathered around him, eager to hear what had happened. Some listened with hope, while others waited carefully, unsure whether cooperation with outsiders would truly benefit them. He explained the agreement slowly, emphasizing that unity did not mean losing identity. Instead, it meant finding ways to stand strong while respecting others. The woman traveled with him for a time, helping explain the details to different families and leaders. She spoke clearly and simply, making sure everyone understood both the benefits and the responsibilities that came with cooperation. Some welcomed her warmly, impressed by her patience and understanding. Others remained cautious, watching her closely to see if her actions matched her words. Winter created challenges that no meeting could fully prepare them for. Food became harder to gather, and long journeys between settlements required careful planning. Yet these difficulties also created opportunities for cooperation. Groups that had once avoided each other began sharing resources, not because they were forced to, but because they saw practical benefits in working together. One morning, a caravan arrived, carrying supplies from a neighboring community that had agreed to support the new alliance. The sight of shared goods created mixed reactions. Some people felt grateful, while others worried that accepting help might create dependency. The shaman encouraged open discussion about these concerns, reminding everyone that cooperation should remain balanced and respectful. The woman organized small gatherings where people could talk freely about their feelings. She believed that hidden fears often caused greater problems than open disagreements. Around evening fires, people shared stories about past hardships, revealing how old conflicts had shaped their views. Listening to each other's experiences created unexpected moments of connection. Despite these positive developments, not everyone supported the growing alliance. A small group expressed strong doubts, believing that cooperation would eventually weaken traditional ways of life. Their concerns were not spoken with anger, but with deep worry. They feared that change would slowly erase what made their culture unique. The shaman did not dismiss their fears. Instead, he invited them to speak openly. He listened carefully, acknowledging that protecting tradition was important. He explained that unity did not require surrendering identity. Rather, it allowed people to share strengths while remaining true to themselves. Some members of the group began to reconsider their position, though others remained unsure. As winter deepened, a sudden challenge tested the fragile trust that had been built. A misunderstanding about shared hunting territory caused tension between two communities. Each believed the other had crossed agreed boundaries. Rumors spread quickly, creating anxiety among those who had worked hard to build peace. The woman and the shaman traveled together to meet with both groups. The journey through snow-covered plains was slow, giving them time to reflect. She expressed concern that even small mistakes could threaten the progress they had made. He reassured her that challenges were natural, and that true unity grew stronger through overcoming difficulties. When they arrived, the atmosphere felt heavy. People stood apart from each other, their expressions guarded. Instead of beginning with accusations, the woman suggested sharing meals together first. Eating together helped ease tension, reminding everyone of their shared humanity. Afterward, discussions began calmly. Through careful conversation, they discovered that the misunderstanding came from unclear communication rather than intentional disrespect. Boundaries had been described differently by translators, creating confusion. Once the truth became clear, relief spread through both groups. The moment reinforced the importance of clear communication and patience. During this time, the woman and the shaman worked closely, learning from each other constantly. He admired her practical approach to solving problems, while she respected his ability to calm people through spiritual guidance. Their partnership became stronger, rooted in trust rather than expectation. As weeks passed, shared traditions began to develop naturally. Storytelling gatherings allowed people from different backgrounds to exchange cultural lessons. Children learned new games and songs, creating bonds that older generations had never experienced. Watching these moments filled the shaman with quiet gratitude. However, challenges continued to appear. A harsh storm struck unexpectedly, damaging shelters and making travel nearly impossible. Communities that had once struggled alone now reached out to each other for support. Teams worked together to repair structures and share food. The experience created a deeper sense of unity than any agreement written during the gathering. The woman organized teams to ensure that help reached those most in need. She encouraged collaboration rather than dependence, ensuring that everyone contributed according to their ability. The shaman supported her efforts by offering emotional guidance to those who felt overwhelmed by the storm's impact. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together, watching the fire. Snow fell softly around them, creating a peaceful silence. They reflected on how far things had come since their first meeting by the river. Both recognized that unity required constant effort. It was not a single achievement, but a continuous process, shaped by everyday choices. She spoke about moments when she still felt like an outsider, unsure where she fully belonged. The shaman listened carefully, understanding that her ability to move between cultures also created loneliness. He reminded her that bridges often stood alone but were essential for connecting distant places. Their bond grew deeper through these conversations. It was based on shared purpose rather than dramatic gestures. They trusted each other's judgment and supported each other during moments of doubt. As winter slowly began to soften, signs of change appeared. People greeted each other more warmly, and shared events became more common. Trade routes operated smoothly, and misunderstandings decreased as communication improved. Even those who had once resisted the alliance began to acknowledge its benefits. One final challenge came when a small group attempted to disrupt a shared celebration, believing that unity threatened their traditions. Instead of responding with anger, the woman and the shaman invited them to speak openly during the event. Through honest conversation, many fears were addressed and tension eased. The experience showed that listening remained the strongest tool for maintaining peace. As the season moved toward spring, the shaman realized that the dream he once questioned had guided him toward this partnership. The woman's presence had helped unite people not through force, but through empathy and steady courage. Together, they had turned fragile agreements into living relationships. Standing beside the river at sunset, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The journey was far from over, but the foundation for lasting unity had been built. People from different communities now saw each other not as strangers, but as partners in a shared future, proving that patience and understanding could transform even the deepest divisions. Spring arrived slowly, melting the last traces of winter from the plains. The snow retreated into the shadows, and new grass pushed through the earth with quiet determination. The air felt lighter, carrying the sounds of birds returning and the distant laughter of children playing near the river. For the Lakota Shaman, the change in seasons felt symbolic. The long months of effort, patience, and uncertainty had led to something new, something fragile yet hopeful. Communities that had once kept distance from each other were now meeting more often. Shared markets formed along familiar paths, where traders exchanged goods and stories without the tension that once filled every conversation. People still remembered past disagreements, but they were no longer defined by them. Instead, they focused on building something stronger together. The woman continued traveling between groups, helping maintain the connections they had created during the gathering months earlier. Her presence had become familiar rather than surprising. Many now welcomed her as a trusted mediator, someone who listened carefully and spoke honestly. She never claimed credit for the changes happening around them. Instead, she reminded everyone that unity came from collective effort. The shaman observed these developments with quiet pride. He spent time teaching younger members of his community about balance and respect, encouraging them to see cooperation as a strength rather than a threat. He often reflected on the dream that had once puzzled him. At first he had believed it showed a single moment of destiny. Now he understood that the dream had pointed toward a long journey, one that required constant care and shared responsibility. A large ceremonial gathering was planned to celebrate the growing alliance between communities. The idea came from many voices, not just one leader. People wanted to mark the progress they had made and strengthen their commitment to peace. Preparations began weeks in advance. Families worked together to prepare food, craft decorations, and arrange spaces where everyone could feel welcome. As the day approached, travelers arrived from many directions. Some had been part of the original gathering by the river, while others came because they had heard stories of cooperation spreading across the plains. The atmosphere felt different from previous meetings. Instead of cautious distance, there was curiosity and cautious excitement. The woman arrived early to help organize the event. She moved through the camp with calm efficiency, greeting familiar faces and meeting new ones. The shaman watched her from a distance for a moment, remembering the first time he had seen her. The recognition he had felt then had grown into deep respect and trust. During the opening ceremony, elders from different communities spoke about their experiences over the past months. Some shared stories about challenges they had overcome together. Others spoke about how their children had formed friendships that crossed old boundaries. Listening to these stories, the shaman felt a deep sense of gratitude. Music and storytelling filled the air as evening approached. People danced, shared meals, and exchanged gifts that represented their cultures. The event was not perfect. Small misunderstandings still happened, and some individuals remained cautious. Yet the overall feeling was one of hope rather than fear. At one point, the woman addressed the gathering. She spoke simply, thanking everyone for their patience and courage. She reminded them that unity did not erase differences, but allowed those differences to exist peacefully. Her words were not dramatic, but they carried weight because people trusted her sincerity. The shaman also spoke briefly, emphasizing the importance of continuing to listen to one another. He shared a story about how dreams sometimes guide people toward opportunities rather than outcomes. Many listened closely, understanding that his words reflected the journey they had all experienced together. Later that night, as the celebration continued, a moment of tension arose when two individuals argued over a misunderstanding about shared resources. In the past, such moments might have grown quickly into larger conflict. This time, however, others stepped in calmly, encouraging conversation rather than confrontation. The woman and the shaman watched quietly as people resolved the issue themselves, demonstrating how much had changed. After the celebration ended, the camp slowly grew quiet. Fires burned low as people rested after the long day. The shaman walked toward the river, feeling the cool night air against his face. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see the woman joining him. They stood together without speaking at first, watching the water reflect the moonlight. He thanked her for everything she had done, though she gently corrected him, saying that everyone had played a role in building unity. He smiled, recognizing her humility. They talked about the future, acknowledging that challenges would continue. Unity was not permanent unless people chose it again and again. She spoke about her plans to keep traveling, helping other communities learn from their experience. He shared his hope that younger generations would carry forward the lessons they had learned. The bond between them felt steady and natural. It was built on shared purpose rather than expectation. Both understood that their connection had grown through work, trust, and mutual respect. As spring continued, the alliance between communities became stronger. Shared councils were held regularly, allowing people to discuss issues before they grew into problems. Trade routes expanded, bringing prosperity and cooperation. Cultural exchanges became common, allowing traditions to be celebrated rather than feared. The shaman noticed how children adapted most easily to the changes. They played together without thinking about old divisions. Watching them gave him hope that the future would be shaped by understanding rather than conflict. One morning, he returned to the place where he had once walked alone during the early days of uncertainty. The grass moved gently in the wind, just as it had before. He reflected on how much had changed since then. The dream that once felt mysterious now seemed clear. It had not promised a perfect world but had shown him the possibility of unity through partnership. The woman joined him there later that day. Together they watched the horizon as sunlight spread across the plains. They spoke about how unity required continuous effort, like tending a fire so it would not fade. Neither claimed to have all the answers, but both believed that the path they had begun was worth continuing. The story ends with them standing side by side, not as heroes above others, but as participants in a larger journey. Around them, people from different communities moved freely, sharing work and laughter. The alliance they helped nurture continued to grow, proving that patience, understanding, and courage could bring people together, even after years of separation.